Hello, Dr. Ron England here, and I'm with part 2 of Simple Interface Design using CSS Deck. And what I'm going to show you is some changes that I made to part 1, things that you can add to kind of bring this more towards an application. Remember, what we're doing is we're just using an application on the internet called CSS Deck to be able to do HTML and CSS, and from the HTML and CSS be able to design interfaces. So in part 1 we actually made a div that actually was a box that was like this to basically mimic a phone interface, and we made a simple form. The thing was that our simple form was not really a form. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you, for a form I need you to be able to click submit and then it goes to a target. Well, to do that, I actually got to make a target. So I'm going to go over here to my little profile here, and I've created a target here called form results. And all it does is says thank you for your submission, and it's got this URL right up here, and so I've got a location that I can send it to. All right, so let's go back to my profile and go back to my original document that I was working on. So let me close that so you can see and show you what I did. So the first thing that I did, let me move this over so you got a little bit more room. The first thing that I did was I had my label input, and I wrapped them inside of a form tag. Form tag defines what you've built as an actual form, which means that when you click submit, it will go somewhere. It will actually submit it. And what that means is it sends it back to the server with the variables that were in the form itself. Now the variables I noticed here I had ID. I also defined the attribute name. It's the same as the ID, and the reason for that is in some applications you need that name attribute to be set so that those variables have the right name associated with them. Not anything tricky here. I just basically have ID and name, and those names were that's the name of this element, which is this text box. And this one right here is the name of the element, which is this text box. And the submit didn't change. But see, I'd made this form. The action is the URL of where it's going to go. And I made it get so that you can actually see the variables. There's method, it can be post or get. All you really need to concern yourself with now is that when you do get, the variables are actually visible in the URL. So I also came down here and I put this, I made an anchor tag, which is an A, which an href, which is again where you're going to send it. With the text, this is a link, and then I closed the anchor tag. And I put that anchor tag inside of a div. There's your open div, here's your closed div. And I did that with that div. I did it because I wanted to do some styling on it. So I made a CSS class called button text. So here I defined the div to have button text, and here is that button text. And in this class, the EN3722, it's a great time to play around with CSS. You're going to have to learn it later. You're going to learn all of HTML and all CSS if you don't know it, and this just allows you to kind of get your feet wet with CSS. If you look at the CSS, it should all be pretty much self-explanatory. I've got a margin left, which is basically this margin right here. I've got a padding. The padding is the padding of the text inside of the div. I'm floating this to the left, which means that it's going to move over from the left. It's got a width, it's got a border radius, and it's got a background color. Pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to save off what I've done here, and now I'm going to go over to my share, and I'm going to bring it up in full screen. So let me come up here to make a new tab here, and I'm bringing it up in full screen. And I'm going to show you something that's kind of interesting here. First, if that's that form. If I go ahead and put in a name here, John Doe, and I hit submit, nothing's going to happen. And the reason nothing happens is because this actually is anchored inside of an iframe. The application is actually stopping it from being able to do that. But if I go over here and click this as a link, okay, it actually goes to the other page that you had. The link works, but the form does not. But I can actually get around that also. I'm going to show you a trick. If I go right here and I say view page source. Now I can also view the frame source, but I'm going to do the page source. And I come down here and I actually scroll down, I'm going to see that what you wrote is embedded in HTML inside of an iframe. Now, you don't have to worry about right now in this class what an iframe is. You're going to learn that in COP 4813. But if I take that source and I copy it up into the URL, it's going to look just like it did before, but now it's not anchored inside of an iframe. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means to me that if I go ahead and enter last name and first name, and I click submit, it actually submits it. Now, something else that it also does, which we're not going to parse it right now, but if you look up here at the URL, that question mark TB first name equals John, ampersand TB last name equals Doe, it passed over in the URL the variables that were entered into the boxes. So the form tag, that form tag, the action was where it went, and the variables got passed over with it in the URL, which is what the get tells it to do. So what that means is that you can now link from location to location using CSS Deck, using both form tags and anchors. You can do them both. Well, what does this mean? You can start designing interface screens as separate projects in CSS Deck, but now you can link between those interface forms. Something is pretty exciting. It should be fun for you. Have fun with this because now you're going to start designing interfaces, and I'm going to be producing more videos to show you how to do some pretty cool stuff. Thank you very much and good programming, because you are now programming. Cool.